As the international community waits to see how the diplomatic process to resolve the chemical weapon dispute in Syria plays out, Syrian refugees near Erbil express how military intervention is the only way to end the conflict and for them to go back home, while some say it is not. About 40 kilometers outside of Erbil, the Karagosk refugee camp houses about 15,000 Syrian refugees. All of them, predominantly of Syrian Kurdish ethnicity, have come from cities in Syria like Damascus, Aleppo, and Qamishli, which is in the north of Syria. They know from first-hand experience the situation unfolding in their country and weighed in on what the benefits of military intervention over diplomacy would be. Ahmed Smail, who fled Syria into Iraqi Kurdistan to escape the oppression of Jabhat al-Nusra, a Sunni terrorist group siding with the Free Syrian Army in the civil war, said how he felt military intervention was the only solution and that disarming Assad's chemical weapons cache would not resolve the problem. The military intervention is the only way out. Military intervention is needed for peace. When there's no other options left to establish this peace, it seems like it's the only way to go. We want a resolution, and it doesn't matter how we find it. U.S. President Barack Obama, for the past weeks, has been urging Congress to pass a limited military strike against Syrian President Bashar Assad, which would not include troops on the ground, following a chemical weapons attack near Damascus, which the U.S. estimated caused about 1,400 deaths, 426 of which were children. But other estimates from organizations like Doctors Without Borders cite a much smaller death toll of around 355. We moved from Damascus because of the chemical attacks. We wanted to save our children as there was killings, abductions, and fear. Obama's call for a limited military strike met much resistance from Congress and the world, claiming the United States was beating the war drum once again for the U.S. to enter into another Middle Eastern conflict 2 years after pulling out from Iraq. Obama and Secretary of State John Kerry claimed U.S. intelligence had irrefutable evidence that Assad was behind the attacks, using it as a foreground for military intervention in Syria. But many in the international community, along with U.S. politicians, urged the United States to follow a much more diplomatic process in resolving the issue. The resolution came when Russia provided a solution for Assad to turn his chemical weapons over to an international body as a part of a UN Security Council resolution in order to turn the U.S. away from a strike which could potentially exacerbate the situation in Syria.
We have come here to define a potential path forward that we can share with our international partners. And together we will test the Assad regime's commitment to follow through on its promises. We are serious, Mr. Foreign Minister, we are serious, as you are.
One refugee felt it was not the best solution and would do nothing to halt the devastation in the country. Military intervention would definitely be better. It should have been done earlier. Just yesterday, the United States, Russia, and Syria agreed on a framework that constitutes Assad must eliminate all of his chemical weapons by mid-2014. Assad must also destroy chemical weapons production equipment by November of this year.
We have Syria for the first time acknowledging that it has chemical weapons, agreeing to join the convention that prohibits the use of chemical weapons, and the Russians, their primary sponsor, saying that they will push Syria to get all of their chemical weapons out. The distance that we've traveled over these couple of weeks is remarkable.
The United States and Russia estimate Assad has about 1,000 tons of chemical agents and precursors located at about 45 sites under Assad's control. But Russia believes there are much less sites, and some of them are under rebel control. The world is able to breathe a sigh of relief as the United States chose diplomacy over military action, which could have potentially caused a much larger and international conflict. And there is one refugee who feels diplomacy is the only way for true resolution in Syria and not military action. The conflict will not end because many people have been killed. The country has been dispersed and broken up, and people are fleeing. The only way to resolve the situation is politically. There are an estimated 2 million Syrian refugees who have fled from the conflict and gone to neighboring countries like Egypt, Iraq, Turkey, and Jordan. The 2.5-year conflict begun as what was once a bid for freedom by the Free Syrian Army, but as the sectarian lines continued to be drawn, it has moved into a full-blown sectarian conflict. Since the conflict has begun, more than 100,000 people have died, according to the United Nations. This is Armando Cordoba for Root All English.